Do you know how to recognize the signs that the Holy Spirit is present in your life? Perhaps you are looking for a spiritual transformation, something that will change the way you live and see the world. The good news is that these changes may already be happening within you without you even realizing it. What if I told you that there are simple attitudes that can reveal this divine presence? Imagine living with more peace, patience, and unconditional love in your daily life, even when faced with challenges. Do you want to discover how these attitudes can transform your life? Stay with me until the end of this video, and you will see how the Holy Spirit can be acting in you right now. Unconditional love is one of the greatest examples of spiritual transformation. It goes beyond temporary feelings or what we receive in return. This type of love, which is a fruit of the Spirit, is a direct reflection of God's love for us, a love that does not depend on our actions or merits. Practicing this love drives us to be altruistic, to look at others without judgment, offering the best we have. A simple example is showing love by genuinely listening to someone who is going through a difficult time, without expecting anything in return. Often, this unconditional love manifests itself in small, everyday actions. It could be the warm hug we give to someone who needs comfort, or the patience we show when someone hurts us. It is important to remember that unconditional love is not about perfection, but about the willingness to love, even when the other person does not seem to deserve it. By doing this, we are planting seeds of faith and trust in the power of the Holy Spirit in our lives. Unconditional love also requires forgiveness. No one is exempt from failing, and knowing how to forgive is one of the most profound acts of love we can demonstrate. Imagine someone who has deeply hurt you, and yet you choose to forgive them, even without hearing an apology. This type of attitude goes against human logic, but it is clear proof of the Holy Spirit working in our hearts. Finally, unconditional love is not something we achieve on our own, but a fruit that grows in us as we surrender ourselves to God. The more we seek an intimate connection with Him, the more our capacity to love as He loves expands. Thus, unconditional love becomes the basis of all our actions, guiding us toward peace, patience, and humility in all our interactions. Peace is an inner state that transcends external circumstances, and maintaining peace in times of conflict is a true test of self-control and faith. The presence of the Holy Spirit helps us to be peacemakers, even when tensions rise and words become harsh. When someone provokes us, or a situation escalates, the Spirit enables us to remain calm, avoiding impulsive reactions. An example of this might be a heated argument at work or in the family, where instead of responding with anger, we choose to take a deep breath and speak gently. Being a peacemaker does not mean avoiding conflict at all costs, but knowing how to act wisely and in a balanced way. Many times, it is necessary to be patient and allow the other person to express their feelings, even if this causes discomfort. Maintaining peace in the midst of conflict can be as simple as not interrupting or judging, but seeking understanding and empathy. True peace brings reconciliation, not division, and this is only possible with the Holy Spirit guiding our actions. Another way to cultivate peace is through prayer and surrender to God. In moments of tension, instead of letting anxiety take over, we can seek God's presence, asking for wisdom to act. A practical example is to intentionally pause in the midst of a disagreement and pray for clarity and serenity. This attitude not only calms the heart, but also brings a different perspective on the problem, allowing inner peace to guide our decisions. Finally, we must remember that being a peacemaker is a daily calling. No matter how big or small the conflict is, our mission is to be agents of peace, reflecting the character of Christ in every situation. By maintaining peace, we are showing that the Holy Spirit is present in our lives, enabling us to deal with challenges calmly and confidently, guided by unconditional love and humility. Patience is a virtue deeply connected to the fruit of the Spirit, and practicing it in difficult circumstances is a clear form of spiritual transformation. In times of waiting or trials, patience helps us trust in God's timing, knowing that He has a purpose in each situation. It is common, for example, when we face financial or personal challenges, to want an immediate solution, but it is in these moments that the Spirit teaches us to have faith and trust, waiting with serenity. Being patient does not simply mean waiting without complaining, but doing so with peace in your heart. Imagine someone who is waiting for an important answer, such as a medical diagnosis or a career change. Instead of giving in to anxiety, this person can remember that patience brings spiritual growth, as James 1:2-4 teaches us. At these times, prayer becomes a valuable resource, bringing the certainty that even if time seems long, God is in control. Patience is also revealed in the little things of everyday life. It could be being irritated in traffic, waiting in line at the bank, or even dealing with people who test our limits. Practicing patience in these moments is an exercise in self-control and trusting that everything happens as it should. A simple gesture, such as choosing not to get irritated by an unexpected wait, is a practical example of how we can apply this virtue in our daily lives, transforming our attitude towards challenges. Finally, patience is a way of demonstrating unconditional love, as it leads us to bear with others in their weaknesses and limitations. As we cultivate this patience, both in difficult situations and in daily interactions, the Holy Spirit works within us, molding us into the image of Christ. Thus, even in the most difficult trials, we can find peace and strength to persevere. The joy that comes from the Holy Spirit is unlike any fleeting joy that the world offers. It does not depend on external circumstances, but is deeply rooted in our faith and trust in God. Even in times of sadness or difficulty, this joy remains, sustaining our soul. For example, a person may face a significant loss and still find reasons to be thankful and keep their heart full of gratitude, knowing that God is present in all things. This spiritual joy is a daily choice. It is easy to be joyful when everything is going well, but the true joy of the Spirit is revealed in times of challenge. Think of someone who has lost their job but decides not to be discouraged, believing that God has a greater plan. This attitude of faith and trust, of maintaining joy despite the circumstances, is a clear manifestation of the fruit of the Spirit. This person chooses not to let difficulties steal their inner peace. Another way to maintain joy is through self-control, not allowing negative or pessimistic thoughts to dominate the mind. A practical example is to start the day by seeking God in prayer, thanking Him for His blessings, and asking for strength to face challenges. Prayer, as well as reading biblical passages that speak about joy in the Lord, can renew our hope and remind us that our joy is based on something much greater than our momentary circumstances. Spiritual joy also manifests itself in how we treat others. When we choose to live in joy, we spread this light to those around us, being an example of patience and peace. Even in difficult times, we can transmit this genuine joy with a smile, a word of encouragement, or a simple act of kindness. In this way, we experience not only a joy that strengthens us, but also transforms those around us. Kindness and mercy are clear reflections of the unconditional love that the Holy Spirit cultivates in us. Showing kindness goes beyond being polite. It is about acting with compassion, even when it is not deserved. A practical example is helping someone who has always been indifferent or ungrateful to us. Instead of reacting coldly, we choose to be kind, because we understand that our kindness should not depend on the other person, TM's attitude, but on what the Spirit works in our hearts. Kindness also manifests itself in small daily gestures, which often go unnoticed but make a big difference. It can be as simple as offering help to an overworked colleague at work, or paying attention to someone who is feeling lonely. These acts of kindness reveal a transformed heart, guided by faith and confidence that, by being good to others, we are mirroring the character of God. Mercy, on the other hand, is when we choose to forgive or lighten someone's burden, even when there is no justification for doing so. When we choose not to respond with judgment or punishment, but with compassion and forgiveness, we are reflecting the merciful character of Christ. An example is when someone hurts us deeply, and yet we offer forgiveness without demanding reparation. This type of attitude can only come from a true spiritual transformation, where the Spirit molds us to be more like Christ. Practicing kindness and mercy is an exercise in humility. We do not do it to be seen or praised, but because we believe that this is the right way. By showing kindness, even when it is not expected or deserved, we show that we are living under the guidance of the Holy Spirit. This is how we help spread the love, patience, and peace that He offers us, allowing these attitudes to touch and transform the lives of those around us. Self-control is one of the fruits of the Spirit that reveals a profound spiritual transformation. It manifests itself when we are able to moderate our reactions, especially in moments of anger, anxiety, or temptation. A common situation in which self-control is put to the test can be in traffic, when someone cuts us off recklessly. Instead of reacting impulsively, the Spirit enables us to remain calm, demonstrating patience and peace, and not giving in to irritation. Controlling our emotions and reactions is not something that comes naturally. It requires practice and a constant connection with God. When someone provokes us or the situation is stressful, we can choose to step away for a moment, take a deep breath, and ask God for wisdom to respond with gentleness. This small act of self-control can avoid major conflicts and maintain peace in our relationships. In addition, this practice shows faith and trust that God is in control and gives us the strength to deal with each situation. Self-control also means having control over our desires and impulses. For example, when we face temptations, whether at work or in our personal lives, it is the Holy Spirit who helps us to say no to what takes us away from God and yes to what brings us closer to Him. A practical example of this would be when we are tempted to respond aggressively in an argument, but we choose to remain calm. This self-control protects us from rash actions and keeps us steadfast on the path of spiritual transformation. Finally, self-control is a way of demonstrating humility. When we recognize our limitations and seek God's help to moderate our reactions, we are accepting that we are not perfect, but that we can be transformed. This self-control that the Holy Spirit gives us is proof that we are growing in our faith and becoming more and more like Christ, living with unconditional love and patience in our daily actions. Seeking justice is a calling that comes from the Holy Spirit and is deeply connected to the character of God. It is not just about doing what is right when it is easy, but also about standing up for what is right, even when it puts us in difficult situations. A practical example of this is in the workplace, where we may be tempted to ignore an injustice so as not to harm ourselves. However, the Holy Spirit guides us to act with integrity, seeking truth and justice in all circumstances. In many situations, seeking justice also means being willing to listen to the other side, seeking to understand before judging. Often, we are so fixated on our own perspective that we fail to see what is at stake for the other person. Maintaining a humble and learnable heart can help us seek justice in a balanced and peaceful way. Furthermore, by standing up for what is right, we are reflecting the unconditional love of God, who always seeks the good for all. Justice, however, should not be confused with revenge or retaliation. When we are wronged or mistreated, the desire to seek justice should not turn into bitterness or a desire to return evil. Instead, we can turn the situation over to God, trusting that He is the righteous judge. Practicing justice also involves forgiving, even when it seems difficult, demonstrating that our trust is in God and not in our own strength. Finally, seeking justice is an exercise in faith. Often, doing what is right will not bring immediate rewards, and we may even face hardships. But the Holy Spirit strengthens us to stand firm on the path of righteousness, knowing that we are acting in accordance with God's will. Thus, in our daily actions, we can be a light in the world, promoting peace, self-control, and love in all our decisions and interactions. True faith is not something that wavers in the face of difficulties. It is an unshakable trust in God, even when we cannot see the path ahead. The Holy Spirit strengthens us so that our faith remains firm, especially in times when doubts try to take over. A practical example of this is when we face financial or health problems, and even without seeing an immediate solution, we decide to continue trusting in God's care. This trust brings us peace and patience, knowing that He always fulfills His promises. Exercising faith also means choosing to believe, even when our emotions tell us otherwise. Imagine a person who has been praying for something for years and still has not seen the answer. Instead of giving up or questioning God's plan, this person remains steadfast because he understands that faith is not based on circumstances, but on the certainty that God is faithful. This kind of faith transforms our lives, gives us self-control in the midst of adversity, and strengthens our confidence that everything has a purpose. Moments of doubt are inevitable, but it is in these moments that our faith is tested and purified. When we feel weak, it is important to remember that we are not alone. We can seek support from people of faith, from Bible readings that encourage us, or simply spend more time in prayer. Reading Hebrews 11, for example, reminds us of great examples of faith and inspires us to continue trusting, even when everything seems uncertain. These moments are opportunities for spiritual growth and to draw even closer to God. Finally, constant faith is a demonstration of humility. Recognizing that we do not have all the answers and that we depend on God puts us in a position of surrender and total trust. Even in the midst of doubt, the Holy Spirit works in our hearts, reminding us that spiritual transformation happens when we trust in what we cannot see. And so our faith guides us to live fully with love, patience, and self-control, regardless of the circumstances around us. Humility is one of the most precious traits that the Holy Spirit cultivates in us. It reminds us that everything we have and are comes from God, and not from our own merits. In our achievements, humility prevents us from exalting ourselves or placing ourselves above others. On the contrary, it teaches us to recognize that each victory is a blessing, and not just our achievement. For example, a person who achieves great professional success instead of boasting can thank God and use his position to help and serve others. In interpersonal relationships, humility is fundamental. It allows us to listen more, speak less, and be willing to learn from others, regardless of their positions or experiences. We are often tempted to impose ourselves or want to have the last word in arguments, but true humility leads us to give in, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. It brings peace and balance to our interactions, showing that self-control and patience are essential to maintaining healthy and lasting relationships. In addition, humility protects us against pride and arrogance. When we recognize our limitations and failures, we are more compassionate and understanding with others. A practical example is admitting a mistake at work or at home, without seeking justification or blaming others. This demonstrates a genuine spiritual transformation and reflects the character of Christ in our attitudes. Humility makes room for forgiveness and reconciliation, creating an environment of peace and trust. Finally, living with humility is a clear sign of the presence of the Holy Spirit in our lives. It leads us to serve others with unconditional love, without expecting recognition or reward. Humility makes us more approachable and truthful, allowing our actions and words to be guided by the Spirit, bringing peace and patience in every situation. By being humble, we demonstrate that our strength comes from God, and that without Him, we are nothing. Forgiveness is one of the greatest demonstrations of unconditional love and spiritual transformation. When we forgive, we free our hearts from bitterness and allow the Holy Spirit to lead us to a life of peace and reconciliation. Forgiving is not a simple act, especially when we have been deeply hurt, but it is essential for spiritual growth. A practical example would be that family member or friend who hurt us, and even if an apology never comes, we choose to forgive from the heart. This type of forgiveness reveals faith and trust in God's restorative power. Forgiveness is also a choice we make every day. It can be for small, everyday offenses, such as when someone treats us badly in traffic or at work, or even for major emotional wounds. In each situation, the Holy Spirit invites us to forgive, not because the person deserves it, but because it frees us and brings us closer to God. When we choose to forgive, we are exercising self-control, patience, and faith, showing that the Spirit is working in our hearts. Often forgiving does not mean forgetting or ignoring what happened, but rather choosing not to carry the weight of the hurt. By letting go of resentment, we make room for God, TM's peace to take over our lives. A practical example of this could be finding a way to pray for those who hurt us, asking God to help us release forgiveness and heal emotional wounds. This act of mercy transforms us and brings us closer to the unconditional love that God has for all of us. Finally, forgiveness is a test of humility. We recognize that just as we have been forgiven by God, we must also forgive those who hurt us. Forgiving is a clear sign of the presence of the Holy Spirit in our lives, demonstrating that we are being molded into the image of Christ, who has forgiven us completely. By forgiving, we leave the past behind and move forward with peace, patience, and love in our hearts. How can you bring more peace in conflict situations and show kindness, even when it is not easy? Think of a simple step you can take today to practice these attitudes. Sometimes the first step is the hardest, but also the most powerful. The Holy Spirit is ready to guide you in each of these areas. You just need to open yourself to this transformation. If you want to continue learning and growing spiritually, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way you will receive more content to strengthen your faith and transform your life every day. Let's go on this journey together. And remember, You are never alone. The Holy Spirit is with you every step of the way.